I want to throw this out to you there because I want to see what you think. I've been talking forever about their window. And I think the window with this core is 2 years. And George Kittle actually said something about this recently. He said, we understand that the window, whatever that is, could be closing. We're going to try our best to just keep that window open as long as we possibly can, but we're going to have to try to sneak out some wins while the window is still open. I think that's something our team is very aware of. We have a lot of highly paid players on the team who have earned that money, and you can only pay so many guys. So basically, he's saying this is coming to an end sooner than later. I don't know that Armstead's going to be on the team in a couple of years. I don't know if Kittle will be on the team in a couple of years. Trent Williams is in his mid-30s. McCaffrey's probably only has 2 years left at this level. He's going to be in his late 20s, pushing 30. So is there some kind of pressure on Kyle Shanahan and Lynch? Do they feel that pressure, whether it's maybe just internally or whatever, but to just say, listen, we have to get this done now. We don't have time to wait for Trey. We don't have time for any of this. Like we want to win a ring for Fred Warner, for George Kittle, for these guys. And we need to have the best quarterback who's going to do that now. And maybe they just feel Purdy is bar none that guy. In Lance, there's just too much to learn there. Now, the downside of that is, what if Lance is great in 4 years and you're looking for a quarterback again? To not have that patience. So they brought in a quarterback who was maybe the most inexperienced college quarterback we've ever seen. And they brought him into a team that's ready to win now. And I think we got caught up in that excitement. I sure as hell did, of his talent, and said, well, okay, this guy, look at the upside of this kid. It's going to be great, without really looking at the reality that this kid's probably 2-3 years away.
Right.
You're going to try to win a Super Bowl with him in the next 2-3 years. So I just wonder if there's all this outside pressure or this internal pressure or whatever right now that's sort of forcing their decisions. Like we need to get a ring now with this core. We don't have time for Trey, and they're not worried about the future. That could be part of it. That's a short-sighted way to look at things. Because again, the only thing that it hurts you the next 2 years to keep him on the team is money. That's it. If you really want to see if he's going to develop, because maybe he does take that next step. So it's been a weird situation, man. And maybe a lot of it is their own doing.
It's really it is really interesting because, like, when you do it on television in the preseason, I mean, today people are talking a lot about Malik Cunningham. The other day they were talking a lot about Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Right.
Because when you do it in the preseason, you do it on TV on the NFL Network, people see it, and then it's like, well, wait a second. Your reality is whatever you did last night on TV over what people might have thought, your draft position, or anything else. I say this because Sunday the Niners are going to play, and Trey Lance is probably going to play a full half of football. Mm-hmm. What if he plays great? Then what?
They get a second-round pick.
Does that mean they still trade him? I mean, and is you may be right. It may be about the cap. It may be about, hey, let's put all our eggs in the Brock Purdy basket. I mean, to me, when I heard John Lynch talk in February, it sounded like we're all in on Brock. We're going to recommit to Brock, and we're going to take offers for Trey, and we're going to move on from Trey. And so I said so. And then a lot of people criticized me because I said, well, probably it's going to happen at the draft. And I bet Ryan Hensley it would happen by the draft anyway. It obviously didn't happen by the draft. So people are like, you're wrong, and you're talking about this, and it's you're talking out of left field. I kind of think that what I'm hearing now sounds very much like what I said in February, which is today was day 2 of this practice with the Raiders. It was all Brock Purdy. He's not going to play in the preseason, it sounds like, if you believe some of the reports. We can talk about that in a second. And Trey Lance and Sam Darnold are battling for number 2 or number 3. We'll see who wins, who loses, and then the loser going to be here? See, that's what I'm looking at. Trey making 9, and I'm looking at Sam making 5, and I'm thinking, it looks like if the structure of things, they're going to go with one of those 2 guys, and whoever's the third is going to lose out to Brandon Allen. Just on cap, because Brandon Allen's sitting there for $1 million, which is what a third-string quarterback makes in the NFL. So I think it's really risky to move off of Trey Lance. I mean, look at it this way. You're right. They were a Super Bowl contending team that drafted the most raw, inexperienced quarterback to come out in the last 40 years. Okay, but then when you realize that you've got this inexperienced raw quarterback, but you see him improving, don't you stay the course and figure out a way to make it work on the cap until he develops? Because I mean, it's logical that Trey would have a larger ramp up period than a lot of other quarterbacks. To me,
Hmm.
it's almost to be expected. And now here we are, a couple years in. He's lost a year to a redshirt year. He lost a year to injury, and now here he is in year 3, and he's looking quite a bit better. To me, I mean, and all I would say is, if you move off of Trey Lance, I think you almost have to get something that helps you win the Super Bowl this year. Otherwise, I don't see the wisdom in it. The way the Niners go through quarterbacks, you mentioned it already,
Hmm.
how injured Shanahan's quarterbacks have been. Now, if you get a Montez Sweat, a Chase Young, somebody who could really help you, win the Super Bowl this year, some piece to the puzzle, and some day 3 pick. Okay, to me, that's an easier sell to the fan base than if you just said, you know what, we're going with Darnold, we're going with Allen as the backups, and we're getting a 3rd round pick in the 2024 draft. That's more like you jettisoned him. But if you trade him
Right.
for a piece to the puzzle that could help you win this year, then at least you could say, hey, we're going for it. We're going for it this year. We're all in. And that's why we made this trade. So I don't know I don't know if they're going to trade him or not. But if they do, I'd like to see a NFL player of note, even if he's a player that's a free agent at the end of the year. I'd like to see somebody who could help them win this year come back in that trade.
Yeah, and you mentioned injuries. Did you hear Kyle talking recently when he was talking about when Purdy broke his ribs before or whatever he did to his ribs before the Seattle game,
Right, he
and he was
broke
kind
a
of
rib.
waxing poetic about him coming out and playing. And I kind of wonder, again, whether subconsciously or not, but if part of the reason they are down on Trey is because he's been hurt so much. Not that the injuries were his fault. It's not like he's pulling hamstrings or soft tissue type stuff. But Jimmy was hurt constantly. I mean, Jimmy's one of the most injury prone quarterbacks in recent memory. And then you bring Trey in, and he's played in essentially 5 games. So the preseason game against, I believe it was the Chargers, he hurts his finger. Then he comes in against, I think it was the Cardinals, he hurts his knee. And then this game against the Seahawks, he breaks his ankle. So he's had 3 significant injuries in 5 games. Are they thinking again, low? Is it part of the reason they've soured on him? Not that it's Trey's fault. These are all kind of fluky things. But this is another injured QB. Are they thinking that too? And again, we don't see.
Yep.
I'm
We
just.
don't.
I don't know. I'm
Who
playing devil's
knows? I mean,
advocate,
yeah.
but we don't see what happens. We see what happens in front of our eyes. We're not seeing what's happening in the practices we don't see. We're not seeing what's happening in meetings and things like that. Something over the last 2 years has soured Trey Lance on 49 with 49ers. I don't know what that is, and they'll never come out and say it. We may never know, but something has soured them at
Yeah.
some point. It's obvious at this point. So, but you look to. I don't think, and again, this is the Niners' fault if this is the case, but he's not the runner that maybe some had anticipated that he is. He's an athletic guy. He can move, but he's not a fluid runner in like the way Lamar Jackson is. He kind of
Right.
stumbles into contact. That was when early in the season I was like, why do you keep running him? It wasn't necessarily the play calls. It was that when you look at him, he's not a good runner. He's stumbling into a linebacker. Like you're going to get hurt. And like it did ultimately end up happening. He's not Lamar. He's not Jalen Hurts. He wasn't avoiding contact. So they weren't using him in a way that was, again, if you look at what he can do, Kyle didn't want him to throw. It didn't seem that way anyway. He was having him run a lot. He's not a good runner. What are we doing? What were we doing? When he ends up getting hurt, and then Jimmy, and then Brock, and everything's changed. So I don't know. I don't know, Larry. I feel like this is going to be a topic with fans and with content and everything else until something happens with it. But it's such a crazy situation that they spent all that capital on this guy, and it's gotten to the point it has, and